So the marketplace is a red ocean, right? So a red ocean is where it's a concept, it's a theory, is where the ocean, there's blood in the water, there's sharks everywhere, they're all fighting for a few fish, and of course the fish are dwindling day by day because there's more and more sharks. And if you're one of those sharks, and let's say it's a metaphor for businesses, right? So if you're in the red ocean, then you're constantly battling with your competitors in that kind of murky, bloody waters where instead of focusing on the clients or the customers and servicing the customers, creating innovative products, you spend your time, resources, energy, efforts fighting off other sharks or going after other sharks or defending yourself. You see the scenario, right? It's a pretty messed up kind of scenario. And this is what it is right now. And it's increasingly so, and it's getting bloodier and bloodier. Now, think of the other hand where it's a blue ocean and you're in a blue ocean. There's no other sharks there. And even if there are, they're so far away and there's so much fish that they don't really need to come to you or you don't need to go to them. There's no need to fight. There's no blood involved and you are focusing on your customers. Now, this metaphor has a bit of a caveat to it because you don't eat your customers, so imagine that you're providing a service, right? So anyway, so how do you stand out from the competition? Standing out from your competition is equal to moving away from the red ocean and going into the blue ocean. Now, a lot of people think, a lot of brands, stakeholders, business owners, entrepreneurs think that the way to sort of stand out in a red ocean and to really gain customers and to increase revenue and all that is through focusing on pricing, right? Either that or thinking that they can just simply focus on better products or quality of the products or service, right? Now, let's talk about both of them. By the way, the topic of the video is how to stand out from your competitors, and we'll get to that in just a second. It's important to understand the theory behind how to look at competition in the first place, right? And the pricing. Price wars actually don't lead to a blue ocean. They actually lead to you getting weaker in the red ocean and ultimately being destroyed by the other sharks, because low prices means no profits or low profits, and no profits mean that you have nothing to put back into the business to improve it. So, okay, let's look at how to stand out from the competition. The marketplace is crowded. It's noisy. For every great product out there, there is a competitor waiting in the wings to take a bite out of, hotly contested market share. So it is pretty, it's pretty evident. And if you think about it, really standing out from your competitor should be the top of your agenda. Every piece of marketing, everything. Of course, if you're lucky enough to be in a market segment, in a niche where you have no competitors, then that's fine. You can focus on other things. But if you are in a market segment that is a red ocean, then you need to really focus on standing out from the competitors, not competing with them. Standing out. There's a difference between standing out and competing with them. So, number one, exceed expectations every time. When differentiating your brand, go back to your brand story, right? What does your brand stand for? Looking at your story, what values stand out? What are you trying to achieve? If we take the case of Red Bull, for example, the power of Red Bull brand doesn't come from the product's ability to keep people awake, right? No, that would be rather simplistic. No, its power stems from a certain quality that it promotes, a certain, how would you say, vitality, right? So when people buy Red Bull, as opposed to, other more generic kind of energy drinks, they are making a statement to themselves and to others, right? So the idea of vitality is woven into everything that Red Bull does. If you look at their advertising, if you look at the campaigns that they run, it's really catching on popular culture, getting on to this kind of high energy sports, action, adventure. I mean, for God's sake, they even sent something into space. Yeah, this guy jumps off from a spacecraft or something of that sort, right? And he had a Red Bull logo on it. It was sponsored by Red Bull. And if you look at their airplanes exhibition and these kind of acrobatics with planes, I mean, that's adrenaline. That's how they stood out. Now you might say, okay, Red Bull has millions of dollars to invest in sponsoring these events. I'm a small business. What can I do? I'm not talking about sponsoring plane aeronautics or people jumping off spacecrafts. No, but there's a lesson there. Okay, so it goes beyond just your product. Your product might be the best out there, or maybe not, but your marketing, your advertising, what you talk about should involve that kind of vitality related to your product, right? So you're telling a story, a brand story. So focus on your brand story. Exceed the expectations of your customers every time, okay? Exceeding not just with your product or service. That is given, right? People know this is going beyond. If your contract, if you're a service provider, if your contract says that you're going to provide X amount, do X plus 10. You see what I'm saying? So, number 2, build relationships with quality content. Okay, to build a brand that will be both admired and remembered, you must foster relationships, right? This takes work and dedication. Of course, today, it's easier than ever to connect with your customers on a meaningful level. You can work to become an influencer in your niche. I mean, you can publish a blog, or you're producing a podcast, or you could create a helpful YouTube channel. Whichever touch points you build, just make sure to engage consistently. This means, replying to comments, or going a step further and offering value, right? Being genuine, all those things. If you look at, for example, some of the partnerships out there and some of the way people are producing content, and building relationships, you will start to realize that it is indeed quite easy if you put your mind to it. If you care about your customers, your target audience, then you can create content that builds relationships rather than just being advertising, simple advertisements. And we'll talk about that more in the next few points. Number 3, build quality customer experiences. Now, instead of thinking solely about the ideal customer experience, think in terms of the best brand experience, right? Because customers are attracted to unique brands because they are different. Now, embracing this thought process from the start allows you to build great customer experiences. Now, you can look at fast food kind of businesses, right? And things like McDonald's, or Five Guys, for example. Now, Five Guys, they sort of it's a fast food chain, and it sets itself apart by offering this fresh, never frozen beef at up to 15 toppings you can mix and match in any way you want. Okay, the complimentary, of course, roasted peanuts that they provide in their restaurants, of course, they don't hurt, right? So building a unique brand is all about that balance between customer service, the product, but of course going beyond the product, right? Of course, it's not something you actually do overnight. You need to build it up. You need to think through, and you need to build that kind of customer experiences. Okay, number 4, get personal. People wanted to be treated like people, not like, data on a chart, right? So increase the intelligent quotient of your marketing by moving towards personalized offers and experiences that make consumers feel recognized and valued. This was beautifully done by Coca-Cola when they started. They launched cans with personalized names on them, and of course, if you see your name on a can, would you not buy it? Right. So that is getting personal. But okay, that's a marketing gimmick, you might call it. There are many ways of doing this um, uh, personalized kind of brand building. Okay, so it's not just about product, it's not just about content, it's not just about advertising or gimmicks. It's more about that personalized level. So at every stage, every touch point, think, what can I do to make this more personal, right? I'm sending out an email. What can I do to make it more personal? Maybe an email goes off from your system after someone purchases something on your website. Now, most emails are generic, right? Of course, people don't care. You might say, well, they purchased something, they don't care, they got an email, they just want to make sure they got an email because, hey, when they get an email, they know that the order went through, and that's about it, right? No, but there is a percentage of people who actually do read the emails. And if you delight them, they're going to become your brand ambassadors, right? I did a video recently about, brand ambassadors and how I think you may want to watch that too. I'll leave a link below. So just a small percentage is enough. Don't worry about the people who ignore your emails or whatever. An email is just an example, right? I'm talking about trying to find points of differentiation where you can add this personal level of that interaction, right? Even in your packaging, include something, I don't know, something funny, right? A small, maybe a small card that has a funny quote on it. Got nothing to do with your product, but people will be delighted, right? It'll create that brand differentiation. Okay. Number 5, always seek growth. Now, following the crowd can be a safe bet in the short term, but in the long term, it can stifle growth. Actually, it makes you forgettable. It makes your brand forgettable. Part of following the crowd is buying into short-term fads, right? Instead, focus on long-term growth drivers that will differentiate yourself from your competitors. So this is quite a significant thing because most of the brands are always thinking short-term, and that's because they don't have the knowledge, they don't have the know-how, they don't have the time. You're a business owner, you're running a small business, and you got a product that you need to fulfill, you need to look at the supply chain, you need to take care of the accounts, right? And you need to market. You got a family to keep happy, you got friends you want to hang out with, maybe you're a wine connoisseur and you got that wine tasting trip that you want to do. There's so much. So it's difficult. It's difficult to sort of come up with ideas. And maybe you don't have the budget to hire a brand strategist or a marketing strategist to come up with these ideas. So what do? Well, I would say, instead of looking at, now people do spend a lot of time looking at the competitors and what are they marketing. No, instead, actually go into a cocoon, right? Become a silo, a cocoon, and just look at your product and just look at your target audience and think of ideas on how you can grow, right? Through your own kind of ideas rather than the market. So in fact, try and stay away from what the other competitors are doing and think of your own ideas. I know it might sound risky, but there is benefit in that. Trust me, this is what I did for one of my businesses, a branding agency, right? At a time when everybody was doing the same thing in the graphic design, branding market. This is going back a few years. I actually insulated myself. I stopped looking. This was after, we got burnt by Google and we lost all our traffic and all our, revenue, almost, crashed or burned, but we got up. And that's because I and my partners, we sort of cocooned ourselves and said, to hell with the market segment. We don't care what other graphic design firms are doing. We don't care what other branding agents are doing. Let's see what we can do for ourselves. How would we like to do it, right? How would, if money was no problem, if market was no problem, what is the kind of agency that we would like to see, or we would like to work with, or we would like to work in, right? And bingo, 3, 4, 5 years down the line, we became more glorious than before we got burned, right? By Google. And in fact, I'm glad we did it, because now we actually provide services that make our customers, happy, rather than just providing a service. But anyway, enough about me. So always seek growth. Okay, next one. Don't be afraid of alternative pricing. Okay. Alternative pricing is it's a contested topic, right? This is what I was saying at the beginning when I was talking about the red ocean and the blue ocean. People try to compete on pricing. That is the worst thing you can do. Discounts, no. Yeah, you can do discounts as a way to reward your target audience and your customers, but not as a way to attract customers from your competitors, or as a way to drum up more business. You may be seeing a little bit of business when you price yourself lower than your competitors, or really low, or offering huge discounts, but on the long run it's toxic. It's like cancer, because when you're okay, pricing wars, right, with the competitors is a race to the bottom. It's a race to zero, right? So let's say your product was priced at $100 and you see that your competitors are now charging $85. You then go for $65, right? And then they go for $45. You see what I'm saying? Now what happens is that your profit margins are diminished, which means, number one, you cannot actually invest in developing the business. You cannot invest in marketing or advertising. You cannot even invest in taking care of your employees, if you have employees, or taking care of yourself, right? You will start going into debt. So no, stay away from pricing wars or pricing strategies, competitive pricing strategies. Don't do it. The big brands can do it, right? Because they have volume. Amazon can beat your pricing and, in fact, give away the product free just to drive you out of business, right? I'm not saying they do it, or are they? You see what I'm saying? So don't compete with bigger organizations, bigger brands, bigger companies on pricing level. Instead, set a pricing kind of strategy for your products or services that will sustain you, that will give you profits, that will ensure that you pump back money into the company. Set those benchmarks, and then think of how you can attract customers to pay that kind of pricing, right? So if you cannot improve the product, if it's a product that's as good as it is, then think of what else you can do. What else can you add on so that the customers will buy from you rather than go to Amazon? If let's say you have a store on Amazon, because you do need to, and let's say your product is priced, I don't know, $75 on Amazon, right? But if people buy on your website, price it at $95, $20 more, but for that $95, add something, right? I'm not saying add useless junk as additional, bonus items. No, forget that. I mean, internet is full of people adding additional junk to their core services and saying valued at $25,000, right? So buy my course or buy my whatever service for $997, And then you also get, along with the service, you also get this $25,000 worth of additional bonuses. I mean, come on. Okay, don't go down that route. Instead, think of, in fact, use that $20 to give back to the customer, right? So that $20, buy something with it. Partner with other companies or other product makers and buy those and add them to your product. Now, of course, not just something unrelated. It has to be tightly related, tightly coupled, right? Or offer your personal service, right? Maybe if they buy from your website, I don't know, maybe there's a series of videos related to, you know what I'm saying, okay? I don't want to go into too much because I'm actually dragging on this point, but this point is very critical. To stand out from your competitors, pricing is not the answer. Don't use pricing to stand out. In fact, if you really want to stand out on pricing, stand out by being more expensive than your competitors, right? If you can, if you got the cahoots, if you got the power in you to really provide a better service or product than your competitors, then charge more and let the client see it, right? Let the customer see it, let the market take notice. Now, of course, there is this thing where people might say, well, a market can only sustain a certain level. So if for example, the gadgets you're selling everywhere else is 75 and you want to charge $150, yeah, it's not going to work out. So you know what I mean. All right, to the next one. Number 7, look out for quality partnerships. This is what I was saying just, in the previous one. Partnering with other companies allows you to get more exposure for your brand. This is something you can start working toward right now. Of course, I'm not suggesting that you partner with your direct competition, and they won't, of course. But what I am talking about is partnering with related complementary services so that your brand not only gets exposure, but you're giving value to your customers, right? And the partner is getting value. So together you're benefiting, and together you are sort of differentiating yourselves from your direct competitors. So partnerships is a really good way, right? On to the next one. Number 8, focus on customer service. Customers now have more power than ever, right? After all, left to their own devices, customers are much more likely to share a negative experience than they are to share a positive experience. Now think of yourselves, right? When was the last time you proactively went out there and shared a positive experience? But when was the last time you were trigger happy and you quickly went out there to share a negative experience, right? It's human psychology. When we don't like something, we share it very quickly. When we do like something, we may share it, we may not, right? So you can't just think that, yeah, my service is good, my product is good, and customers will be happy. No, go beyond. Focus on customer service. Customer service is really at the core of really standing apart, right? And you got to really, start integrating customer service into everything, like part of building your brand, because customers talk to each other and the story they tell about your brand matters, right? Number 9, be flexible. Pivot. Pivot has become something of a bad word in the entrepreneurial space, right? But pivoting when necessary isn't the same as abandoning your core values to your brand story, right? So pivoting is, okay, so you have a brand story, you have a brand strategy. You also need to sort of look at and pivot when required, right? Because maybe the strategy is not working. Like for example, Coca-Cola, for example, when they released, I think it was New Coke, it was a disaster, right? People hated it. People hated the flavor, the classic Coke kind of texture, all that was gone. So what did Coke do? Pivot, of course. I don't know if you watch Friends, but there's this episode, right? Famous episode. Pivot, pivot, pivot. Yeah, so pivoting is critical, but pivoting is not about running around like a headless chicken. So let's say you come up with a brand strategy, right? And you implement it and you don't really see results. Results are slow. Don't panic. Don't simply jump around and simply make changes to maybe your branding, to your marketing, to your visuals, and to your service. No, take it easy. I know it's easier said than done. When you got bills to pay at the end of the month, or you got employees or staff that depend on you, you got to pay the rent, or whatever. I understand. You can't just sit around for 2 weeks when there are zero sales. But if you actually build a robust brand, if you invest in getting a good brand strategy, right? Position yourself, and you do it with understanding, you won't be in a position where you need to panic. In fact, you won't be in a position where there'll be 2 weeks without any sales. You see the point I'm saying? So pivoting it's navigation. It's like the small changes. You know how spacecrafts and the shuttle, space shuttle, how you might have seen the space shuttle with these little bursts on the side, and the space or even the landers on Moon or Mars or whatever, they have these little bursts of engine, right? These blue flames, and they are actually used to navigate, to position accurately, precisely. And that is what you need to do in your branding. You need to do these little blasts of pivoting, not huge blasts, right? Not huge kind of changes. Now, a lot of you might be thinking, Mash, then why are you call it pivoting? Because pivot in the startup world is really starting with one product and then pivoting completely, changing direction. Okay, so you start with plastic bottles, and then I don't know what happens, Series A, Series 2 funding comes in, and then you're like, you're now offering, I don't know, digital cards, plastic cards with an app. But no, actually that is not pivoting. Yeah, well, I'm not talking about the semantics. Yes, pivot, it might mean that in technical, but I want you to use that word to sort of use your own, the small bursts, consider that to be pivoting, so that you don't actually fall for that word pivoting, where you have lots of gurus online saying you need to pivot. If your brand strategy is not working, you need to pivot, you need to change. I'm just trying to give you that differentiation, okay, because it's very important. All right. Number 10, show customers what they stand to gain, right? So each marketing content you put out there must have inherent value to the customer. If you can't find the value, then you're not producing content. You're producing thinly veiled advertisements, right? This is very crucial. So your advertising, your marketing should be content generation, not traditional advertising like in the past. So suppose you want to do some AdWords campaign, right? You want to put up some AdWords on Google, the things that come on the right-hand side when people are searching. Instead of going for the usual one, which everybody and your competitors are doing, which is to say the best, whatever, let's say you're selling battery packs, right? So the best battery pack out there, we have 25 years experience. Yes, it's a good way to do it, but it's being done to death, right? Everyone is doing it. Instead, don't advertise your product at all. Why don't you create a campaign where you have a different funnel? And by the way, I'm going to do a series of videos on funnels and lead generation and all that, right? But just for the scope of this video, why don't you think of, for example, a campaign where eventually the people would come towards your product, but that's not the goal of the campaign. It is maybe how to save power, or I don't know, something of interest with your product or service that would add value to your customers. So when they come and they watch that video, or maybe it's just a web page where they come there and there are some tips, maybe they can download something, it's value already, and your advertising is adding value. They will love your brand, and that will lead to sales, guaranteed. I'm not saying, I mean, this is not manipulating. This is give and take in the truest sense. Otherwise, if you're just advertising, what are you really giving your customers, right? You want to take, yes, you're giving your products and all, but you're always making profit on your products, right? So what other value are your customers getting? Why waste time, money, and effort on marketing that simply is about your products and services, right? Where is the value in that? Okay, I will end the video here. Each of these can be a video themselves, but I hope you found this list useful. Please think internal, right? Think internal. Standing out from your competitors is not to compete with them. It is not to play or swim in the red ocean. It is creating a blue ocean for yourself. And the blue ocean, in fact, doesn't have to be a blue ocean. It's a blue pond, right? Rather than being in a red ocean, just be in a blue pond. The pond is yours. You're the only one there. So think, how can I turn my product, my service, my brand, my business, or my brand story into a blue pond where, it's got nothing to do with the competitors. It's me, my product, what I can add value to our customers, right? And it's just about that. Okay, till my next video, take care.